Hey, it's Rich Tyson here. Today we're meeting with Andrea Luoma, and she is one of our great connections in CEObuilder. She's recently spoken to our CEO forums. She has done a presentation called Listen Louder Than You Speak, which is a tremendous idea in and of itself, that so much of how we communicate and work well together has to do with not all of what we say, but how we listen, how we hear, how we connect with others. So we're delighted to have Andrea with us. She is a neuroscience-based communication and leadership consultant, an executive coach, a facilitator, trainer, and educator. And she really is focused on communication. In fact, she is certified in conversational intelligence. And that's probably a new topic. We talk about IQ, we talk about emotional intelligence, but so much of our ability to connect with one another has to do with how we converse. And so Andrea is an international consultant. She's an international award-winning consultant in her field and has done a tremendous amount of work all over the globe, especially in the hotel and hospitality industries. But what she has to say has to do with virtually every kind of industry and is so critical to leaders. So I'm delighted today to introduce Andrea to you, and we have a few questions for her today in this Rich Insights segment. So, Andrea, you've noted that many of us have shelves lined with books. I'm one of those.
As am I.
Leadership and self-development, organizational change. She and I are really, we're siblings, I think.
So, Peas in a pod.
That's right. And yet, Andrea, I've noticed this. You and I have talked about this. Often we don't see people reaping the benefits of all of that, and we seem to be so well educated without necessarily applying things. I'm just wondering how you feel about that and why you see that happening.
I think that happens because we listen to something and it's fantastic and we get excited about it and we like that it's something new, but we don't embrace it enough to think about it and to incorporate the concept literally into our own thoughts. I've heard statistics that I can't repeat off the top of my head, but if you get a book or a concept that says, now go practice this, how many of us do?
Yeah,
if there's little examples, write your response to this or think about that or the top 3 things, how many of us actually do that? We skim it as we read it, and we continue on. Mm-hmm. So we never actually incorporate that new knowledge into what we're thinking or into what we're doing. So it's the thinking about how to process that new. Yes, it was exciting. New squirrel, shiny objects. Yes, so of course it was exciting. Yes. However, what does it mean for me? And how do I embrace it? And how do I take it on? How do I actually start to absorb it? I mean, we don't learn to play tennis overnight. We practice. And we hit a lot of balls back and forth and by ourselves and with a partner and back and forth until we finally can do it somewhat okay. So it's the same thing with any of this new self-help or learning or concepts. We have to figure out a way to embrace it, to practice it and embrace it and to really own it and make it ours.
Thank you. Recently I read an article in one of the magazines that I have stacking up on my desk. And the article was called The Death of Expertise. And it really related to what you're saying, that, we tend to kind of skate on the surface of so much. And yet a lot of the emphasis was exactly on what you said, that we need to think deeply about things in order to get them operationalized in our lives and our businesses and so forth. In your perspective, if altering mindset is so crucial to embracing new ideas, change initiatives, or training programs, why has that been so often neglected in training organizations, training situations?
I think it's been extremely neglected for a couple of reasons. The most obvious is simply time and cost. This is not one and done. I get asked a lot to do a 2-hour training. Like I can come in and I can wave a magic wand and fix the employees in 2 hours and it's going to make it all different. I mean, I can introduce a really interesting concept and give a couple of skills, but I can't change a mindset in 2 hours. And so it's not one and done. And we've treated training like it's one and done, and almost the quicker the better. And
Yes.
we have to change the mindset. We have to change the thinking. We have to help people find ways to embrace the idea into the things they currently do well.
Mm-hmm.
And what if you take two people, you and I as an example, what you do well, we may have some overlap, but it's likely not what I do well.
Sure.
So how do I take those bits and pieces and then incorporate them?
Yeah, I like that. One of the things we've often said is all of us are smarter than any of us, and so how do we work together? You know, it's interesting too. I think there's a little bit in the world of learning of the get-rich-quick scheme.
Of course.
You know, let's get a smattering here and there, and now I've arrived. We love in our business to talk about the idea of providing learning in a moment of need, and that's we feel like that's so important because there's a lot of waste in education. But at the same time, if learning in the moment of need just means that, hey, give me something quick and you've satisfied the need I have, the reality we find we don't get that depth that you're talking about. And so I think that that reference to a real thought investment is really, really important.
I think the other value to you providing the training when in need is that when in need is someone's hungry and someone's interested, and that's when they can take it on. Otherwise, it's interesting, but I don't have time for it.
Yes.
So at this moment, when you provide that piece of knowledge or insight or skill, now I can really find a way to, because I know I need it.
Yes.
So there's a real immediacy that helps with that. The other stuff we'll get to, and we can't get to a lot quickly. There's only, everything is based on sort of that rule of 7, really, and that has to do with short-term memory, how much we can process, how much we can keep in. And so it's a very small, really 4 to 7 pieces of new information. And of course, when we're talking about executives, they've got a million things on their plates.
That's right.
And now to take in new information and incorporate it, it's a challenging thing. So I love that you're doing bite-sized information at that moment of need. I think that's brilliant.
But I think you and I relate on this too. There is a danger when you feel as an outside coach, a consultant, an advisor, if you will, that I have something that you really need to fire hose them. And then instead of getting the outcomes we want, we actually get the opposite.
Exactly.
So
exactly. It's so important, not what I say. And that's for any of us. I say this to executives all the time, especially CEOs. I love to say this too, because I'll say, no one's listening to you. No one cares what you have to say. And with all due respect, they don't. No one cares what I have to say either. It's only important what they hear.
Yes.
And what's important to them.
Yes.
So even in our conversation now, what's important to you and what's important to whoever's listening, that's what's the key there. I might have 10 things I can tell you are important. If you don't find them important, they're not important.
Yeah. Well, and I think that speaks to, and again, this is something I picked up from some of your training with us as well as with others, that issue of people not caring about what you want to impart to them often comes because we don't start with caring about them.
That's very true.
And, I've worked with a lot of CEOs where it's almost, I need to keep my distance, but now I need you to do this and I'm in your face. And that's kind of hopefully an old school way of thinking that's going away.
Well, I would like to think that, yet I meet plenty of executives who are still operating that way, and I think it's unintentional.
Yes.
I think if I sit down and have the time, and someone else has the time to have that, let's share a beverage or a meal and have a conversation.
Yes.
They care. They're interested. The challenge is now we're in the day-to-day and we've got to get stuff done. And so we're all in this, let me just push information at you, push things at you. Here's the agenda. Here's the strategy. And the rest of us are going like this. Well, in the meantime, we've got our own agendas that we're doing to other people as well. So I find that we're living in bubbles as opposed to interacting with those bubbles.
Yes.
And unfortunately, that's a big part of the problem.
Yeah. Well, now, so much of working well with others is a function of trust. again, I think trust often builds off of, hey, I care about you. You can see that in the way we interact. But as you've, I think, alluded to, often even not because by any agenda at all, trust has been broken. Mm-hmm. How can it be rebuilt?
Trust has been broken everywhere. I mean, we see it in our corporate institutions, we've seen it in our financial institutions, we've seen it in our religious institutions, in our nonprofits. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a travesty. How it can be rebuilt is it starts with this.
Yes.
And even more importantly, it starts with this.
Yeah.
And the neuroscience on the eyes, Paul Ekman's work is amazing if you know Paul Ekman. Mm-hmm. There's more information that we are sharing right now in terms of our facial movement of our eyes and our mouths and the vocal, the sound coming from each one of us. Mm-hmm. There's way more information in that than there is in the words that we're saying.
Interesting.
And yet we think, oh, well, I can have a phone call, I can do an email, I can even do a Skype or a FaceTime or something like that. All of those things will miss some of this importance of actually sitting down face to face with someone. And we're just doing business. And certainly we can do a lot of things. I mean, as an international consultant, I do a lot of work remotely.
Sure.
And yet it's a mandatory requirement that I actually meet people face to face.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can't create trust. So face to face is required, and it's in an organizational setting. It has to be on a very regular basis, whatever that is. So that's a big piece of it. Face to face is required.
Yes.
And then the other piece that's really required is to keep someone safe.
Thank you.
And we don't think about that. Mm-hmm. How do I keep you safe? Well, that's from how I support you, the words that I use with you. Mm-hmm. Do I encourage you and open you up? Or do I say things like, well, that was really kind of an outlandish idea. What were you thinking there?
Gee, I've heard that before.
But the reality is when I say that's an outlandish idea, or no, we're not going to do that. Well, here's an interesting thing. One of the most harmful words in the English language, no.
Oh, yeah.
And the way I just said that with that loud tone and kind of abrasiveness, mm-hmm. It literally changed your brain chemicals.
Sure.
It literally, that one word, and of course any of the other negative that goes along with that, mm-hmm. Any ways that we speak in a derogatory sort of way. Now, I'm not advocating for Pollyanna or being always up and always positive, because there's some research that says that can be harmful as well. Mm-hmm. It's sort of an over-positivity.
Sure.
However, if I want to draw you out and open you up, I want to hear more. And I want you to keep talking. And I want you to do that in the most positive way for you and for me.
Yes.
To do that. But we just think I'm just giving information. I'm just telling you what needs to get done next. I'm just giving you the strategy. We don't realize how critically important the word choice and how we frame that is.
Boy, I agree with that. I've had the occasion several times in my career to be in a turnaround CEO role, and the level of trust when you walk in as the new person there to do that is really low. Mm. In fact, is this guy the hatchet man? Am I about to be thrown out of here?
That's right.
And one thing you said that I would just give a second witness to is my approach has always been to go in and say, hey, you folks don't know me, but I'm going to immediately start taking you to lunch, to breakfast. We're going to sit down and talk. And I just have questions for you. And usually the questions are, tell me about yourself. I want to learn a little bit about you and your life, not just what you do here at work. Secondly, that, hey, there are problems here. I've been brought in to move things, but I don't know, other than looking at the financials, what those are. And so tell me what you think they are and what you would do if you were in my shoes to change this. And then finally, what can I do to support you in this interim period while we're figuring out together what we ought to do? And so
I love that.
So often I think people who are in that kind of role come in and I am the savior, I'm going to fix it, and I've got my specific set of strategies, and boy, you better all toe the line. And what I have found that is if I can build that trust, and it's not like they're going to invite me over for dinner and to tend their kids or something. That's not what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But rather that, hey, this guy isn't so scary after all. He's interested in what I have to say, and I'm going to participate in fixing this. That is a prescription for making it work. And so much of it is a function of, as you say, you didn't say it, but I'll say more gentle language, more, I'm not here to beat you up, to fix it. I'm here to listen and learn.
Well, one of the key points that I hung on to when you were saying is when you said, tell me what more I don't know, essentially. You used slightly different words, yet tell me what you know and tell me what you see. That right there is inviting them to have a voice.
Absolutely.
That right there is inviting that they matter, that they're valued. We don't do that enough.
Yes.
We tend to, from our own perspective, because we're so busy. I really believe most of this is unintentional. You know, we open our emails every morning and there's 150 or 200.
Oh, boy.
And we know that there's going to be another 200 2 hours later. And so it's all of this that we have to get done. I don't get it done without you.
That's right.
I need you. And in order to get you to do it, it can't be my agenda. It has to be us together. And more importantly, it has to be how you are going to embrace and do this.
Yes.
And hopefully there's a piece of what I want in there, or at least the outcome. Too often we're prescriptive of this is how it has to be done.
Boy, great word. We believe so much in being more facilitative than prescriptive. And, you know, I'd like to ask a kind of follow-on question here. As we talk about the right way to speak to one another and to build trust, certainly I think that's a leadership skill. But I think there's also, you used the word earlier, mindset. Talk to us a little bit about what should be the right mindset of a leader. And this certainly, you and I are talking in the context of business, but I would think in a home, in a church, in a community. What is the right mindset? Recognizing that, again, there's always an agenda, there's always work to be done, we got to make money, or we want great things for our kids and our family or whatever else, and so it's so tempting just to go hammer it home. But that, I think you and I agree, is so less efficient than if we adopt the right mindset that leads us to the trust language and so forth. So that's my thoughts. What do you think?
No, I agree with that we tend to hammer things home more often than maybe even we need to. And I think we just don't think about it, and we aren't taught to slow down and stop and step back for a minute. I think about even in the political, dare I even bring this up, situation of society today. But so many of us, we get ego involved in this. We get our knowledge based involved in this. And we feel like we need to prove to you what we know or what our ideas are, when in actuality, what most of us want is for the other person to be open-minded.
True.
Most of us want the other person to hear what we have to say, and even potentially slightly alter their perspective to embrace what I have to say. Well, when we're so adamant that I know what I know, there's no space in that to break the veneer a little bit, to go, oh, maybe there's more to learn.
Yes.
Maybe there's something else. And so sometimes it's even that mindset of, I'm intelligent, I'm creative, I've done this, I'm experienced. And yet to step back and say, what don't I know?
Yeah. So, again, I'm not going to specific politics at all, but for someone who is that you as an advisor, and again, for some that may need advising, you're not there, but if they seem to be dogmatic and forceful and I got all the answers, and they're at least willing to listen to Andrea, how would you help them overcome those tendencies?
The first thing I would challenge is I'd play a game with them, really, and say, whatever is being said, you have to find something in it you can embrace.
Good.
And until you can do that, you can't speak. So the rules of the game are no speaking until you can find a way to hear something different than you have heard it in the past.
I love it.
Or accept something different.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, more often than not, what we're doing, you and I might not even, we're not conversing. We're conversing more with the voice in our head than we're conversing with each other.
Sure.
And in that voice in the head, which can speak at 40,000 words a minute, as opposed to our about 200 words a minute.
Wish I could read that fast.
I know, me too. Me too. In that process, we're having a whole conversation up here at the same time. So am I conversing with you, or am I conversing with my head? And did I say what I thought I said? And am I just working to create my rebuttal to you?
Yes.
And to say what I need to say
Very often,
next?
that's true, yeah.
And then I miss what it is that you're actually saying.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've shared this with our CEO forum. One of the best things that I ever learned, I learned in high school debate, which was to be a debater, you have to look at an issue and you have to be able to argue for a pro position and a con position. And when you go to the debate meet, you don't know which of the two they're going to assign you. And so I've said often, when you're finding yourself at odds with somebody, before you immediately leap to rebut, that think through, how would I argue your position? How would I take your side of the table? And that's not easy.
It's not easy. What a great skill to learn in high school.
Yeah. It's something that has blessed my life. Now, I can't tell you I've always been good at this, but I still think that there's some merit in that, and I think some of that's reflected in what you said, that, hey, before you speak, find something that will at least give some merit to what I'm hearing here. Don't immediately, decide to hammer the person for what they're saying to you.
I think that's brilliant, because we, in so many areas, so I think our political system unfortunately pushes it into our business environments and our organizational environments, that I'm delivering my agenda.
Yes.
Well, in my agenda, there isn't necessarily space for you unless you're completely on board with my agenda.
Right.
Which, of course, there's no way, because we're different people. So we have our own agendas at the same time. It's sort of like, I think about CEOs and executives who are getting their message out and wondering why people below them don't hear.
Mm-hmm.
Because the agenda of those people below them is a completely different agenda.
Sure.
Than what theirs is.
Sure.
So until you can find this way to understand who it is you're speaking to, and find a way to bring them into, or more importantly, you into theirs, not at theirs, they're not going to embrace that, but you into their agenda of the day, or thought process, or philosophies, or whatever it is.
Sure.
This is one of our challenges, and we think we need to speak more. We need to listen yes. more, and we need to listen from the other person's perspective, not ours. So often we're listening from our perspective, and it's the other person. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? This is another thing I would challenge. It's almost like the last 30 years, I feel like business has been, emotion isn't important. Feelings aren't important. They're the driver of everything.
Absolutely.
We now know that it is impossible to make any decision that's not emotional. Now, we may rationalize whatever our endpoint decision is, but it is impossible to make a decision that is not emotional. Emotions are important. They're the driver of who we are as individuals. Yeah. And we've tried to push that aside. And we need to bring that out more. Now, certainly we don't need to be drama kings and queens. Yet we need to understand what's driving someone. What's their interest in it? What's their motivation for it? Because as humans, we do two things. We either move toward pleasure and away from pain.
Yes.
So we pull people toward us, or we push them away.
Yeah.
In how we speak to them, in how we allow them a voice, in how we encourage them and support them.
Sure. One of the errors I've made from time to time, try to make it less as I get older, but I have discussed with somebody something that to me is so crystal clear what ought to be done, even as I try to adopt that. Now tell me why you're thinking that, and let me understand it. I walk away saying that was totally irrational. And one of my great counselors, very close friend, said to me, "Well, I can tell you what your problem is, Rich." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "You expect people to be rational."
That's very
Human
true.
beings are not rational.
No,
they're
not.
emotional. You need to get in touch with that emotion and figure out how to work with them. And that was great counsel. Well, let me move you to a couple of other questions here while I've got you. I don't want to lose these. You've shared with me that many organizations create cultures of fear that start at the top And we've talked some about that, but could you elaborate a little more on that, what we might do to overcome that? Again, I think you're right. In most cases, leaders don't want to do that, but we fall into it. So what can we do about that?
We do fall into it, and I like to look at the world with rose-colored glasses. I'm realistic, but I really would like to look at it as a better place. I don't think it's intentional. I think it's inadvertent. The pressure is so intense these days. Pressure for results, quarterly results, outcomes, sales. And in the process for the pressure, that's where this inadvertent pressure gets pushed downhill. And so we're talking about why something happened or didn't happen. And in the why, so why can even be a dangerous question. And I'm not talking Simon Sinek's why, know your mission and your purpose.
Sure.
That's know those things. I agree with him on that. The minute I start asking you why, I'm putting you into a defensive position.
Yeah.
The minute I say why, I'm expecting you to come out and have a justification or a rationalization. And as you just said, we're not rational. Yeah. So if it's for some response to an emotion or a feeling that we're having, we certainly don't want to state that. So why did something happen becomes someone made a mistake, becomes who's to blame. You're to blame, Rich. Now, at least I went like this.
By the way, we are filming this in a park and a lovely fall day, so we're going to have a little background noise. You may have caught some of that already, but enjoy, please. And Andrea, please continue.
So, who's to blame? Rich, you're to blame. Now, notice I went like this as opposed to you're to blame. That's a different thing. So, hopefully it wasn't quite... I have you on the defensive right now. I haven't given you any reason. You haven't done anything wrong. I don't have anything that I'm referring to, and yet I've just changed your brain chemicals to be on the defensive.
Interesting.
Simply by playing with words, simply by having a hypothetical, theoretical conversation. The minute I'm going to blame you because this went sideways, I change your whole brain chemicals, which means you come from a defensive position as opposed to do we get to actually discuss this? And here's some reasons why this happened. So why is a terrible question to ask someone because it puts someone immediately into the defensive.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I was a little boy and I was using the 5 whys technique. I didn't know it as a 5-year-old, but when I got to the 5th why, my mother and my dad would always say, "Because I said so." Enough. and I think again, while I'm grateful that I blame them for my questioning attitude anyway, but that immediately created that, I can't go there anymore, and that builds that fear.
Right, right. So the word choice you use, how you use it, literally opens someone up or closes someone down.
Yes.
So in the discussion of how can we be better, automatically elevated to, you're going to jump in with, I have this idea, or this happened over here, and perhaps we could.
Yeah.
So now this is an open conversation as opposed to when I say why, and it seems to me that it's in your department or your division or your area, Rich, you're in the defensive.
Oh, absolutely.
We're not open for a conversation.
Yeah, and you really put me in that fight or flight mode. I've either got to attack back or channel the blame to somebody else, or I've got to, cower in the corner. I had a great experience once with one of my clients where they were in deep doo-doo, financially they're in big trouble. And I sat with the CEO on this, and after we finally got him to calm down a little bit, I said, well, it seems to me that you have an extraordinary executive team that can help you solve this. And so I said, what we need to do is bring in these people. They are your stakeholders. They do not want this to fail. And I said, if you'll allow me, I want to be there as a facilitator. And I said, here's kind of my rules of the game. We need to not blame. We need to put the evidence of the problem on the table and then ask why in the sense of an organizational issue, not somebody's to blame, but, what's going on here? I need your perspective, and I need you to sit next to me because I don't want you to do anything but listen and take notes for the first half a day that we're going to meet. if you do anything else, I would kick you under the table, which I actually nudged him a few times. But the interesting thing was the meeting started out in this atmosphere of fear. It's like,
you could feel it. I bet.
Oh yeah,
It was
and
palpable.
everybody in the room is virtually silent. I'm asking some questions as a facilitator. Nobody is responding. There's this incredible pregnant pause, and I said, "Look, folks, we have problems to solve here." And the CEO, you notice he's listening. He wants to learn from you, your perspective, and how to solve this. So please share. Again, a lot of silence, and then finally one guy says, "Oh hell, I'm going to lose my job anyway. I'm going to tell you what's wrong." And I said, "Now remember, the rules are no blaming." He said, "No, I'm not going to blame. I'm going to tell you what we're doing wrong." And then he opened the door, and everybody began to participate. We had a 2-day retreat on this, and they developed, not me, not the CEO, they developed a strategy that turned them around.
Brilliant.
But
and then they could embrace it because they
right.
developed
it was buy-in for sure. And yet we started from this fear. I'm not going to touch it. And he kind of went to fight initially. I'm going to tell you. But we had to have somebody break the ice. And it wasn't going to be the CEO. And yet his nature was, I'll tell you what I think it is.
Sure.
And in fact, when I first walked into his office that morning, he had a list of everybody who had let him down and what they had done wrong.
Oh.
And we had quite a discussion on that. So.
And I would have encouraged that as a complete turnaround. Here's all your people. Now tell me what they did right and how they helped the situation.
Very good.
And, I think problem solving, when you're just saying this, and that problem solving, that's the word itself. We focus on the problem, not the solving.
Yes.
Solution solving. How about? Why do we even call it problem solving? Because we
Yeah.
automatically get put in this place that something is to blame. Okay, there's a challenge here. What's the solution? How do we get to the solution, but we get too focused on what the problem is?
Right. Well, and as you were saying that, problem solving, to me, maybe the flip of that is solution discovering.
Even better.
Yeah, that gives my that boost of oxytocin instead
Right.
of cortisol.
Right.
So,
And you can feel it.
yeah,
You
absolutely.
can literally feel it. So all of a sudden, from this defensive perspective to, hey, this is fun. I want to be engaged.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Andrea. Again, I've got you here, so a couple more questions. What insights do you have for leaders regarding the turnover problems being experienced in most organizations? Why do you see it happening, and what can we do about it?
I think this is very related to how we treat people.
Yes.
And we don't give people enough time. We don't take a minute to literally sit with someone and take a breath.
Yeah.
How's your day?
Yeah.
How's your week been? What's the coolest thing that happened this week?
And really care.
And care and be there to listen to it.
This isn't a check off the box thing.
No, this isn't, I need to have this one-on-one with you. This is, I really want to know what's going on in your world. To the point we don't do this, that when I ask those kinds of questions to people, they can't answer.
Yeah.
Because they think that we need to rush this along to get on to the next thing.
Or what is your agenda asking me that?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Oh, now you're going to act like you really care when for the last 3 weeks you've walked past me and have barely said hello.
Yeah. I know your wife has been sick, but you're really asking me this because I came in late because she was sick. What's really going on?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think turnover is indicative to we're also into our own world and what's the next thing. And whether this is in younger generations who are to some degree looking for their place and what they really want to do, well, what they want to do is what they will be to some degree allowed to do.
Yes.
So do we expect them to just be cogs in the wheel and just grunt out this role and that's it? Or do we help them find something that they can get excited about and own and have some autonomy with and create around? How can we help to open someone up to have them be excited about what they do?
Yes.
Both individually and as a group of people.
Well, and so much today, and we hear this a lot from our boomers and older executives, is, well, millennials, they just don't have any loyalty. They take off and go. And again, there's a little sense of blaming in this instead of, okay, well, what do we know about millennials that we can play to? What are they looking for? Some of it, I think, is to be able to have a life, and that we actually
that we could learn from.
Yes,
we could learn
absolutely.
from.
Absolutely. Wouldn't
But
most,
something to add to that,
Yeah,
because I hear that
please.
one too a lot, that millennials don't want to stay, and how their short time perspectives, and they don't really care. If that's our mindset, we're automatically coming at them defensively,
Yes, yes.
as opposed to, you're looking, I understand.
Hmm.
Why?
Yeah, yeah.
What is it you're looking for? But we pigeonhole people into their role, and this is what you do. Not, what are you looking for? If you
Yes.
could design a job, what would you want to do? Now, I can't take you completely out of the job you have right now. However, I could reassign you a percentage of time or put you on this project over here to help gain that skill set, to help have you get excited about being a part of. But we become so, and again, I think we're so rushed, where the pressure is so incredibly intense to do more, quicker, faster, be the best, all these sorts of things, that we don't slow down to embrace what is there, and that's
Yes.
the people and what they can actually bring.
Oh, that's so well said. And again, I think it goes to really learning about people. What are the things that motivate you? What are you after? I had a young man come to me recently, and he said, I want to get a job in a different area of the country. And I said, well, okay, I get it. You'd rather live there than where you are now. And he said, yeah. And I said, so what kind of job would you like? And he said, well, something there. And I said, okay, I want to get a little deeper than this. You've been involved in a specific industry. What do you love to do? What do you want to do? What motivates you? And as we talked about it, I said, okay, now that you've kind of identified an industry, what companies within that industry do you think, have you researched some of those? Go back and research a bit about those companies and see if you can't discover one that you'd really like to move to. That is certainly going to be more valuable to him than just let's move to a new area.
Exactly. And I think we may be so uncomfortable or unhappy with where we are that we think, oh, I'll just jump and it'll be better. I have a good friend
Grass is greener.
who just recently said to me, well, I'm taking a sabbatical and I'm going to South America. And I said, well, that's great, except the problem is going to come with you. So until you solve
Short commercial break for
Right,
some
exactly.
children in the background, which again, we love children, so it's fine. Well, let me move to another question now. Wouldn't most leaders believe they are empowering their employees and providing good working conditions? Don't we think most of them actually feel like they're doing a good job?
I think they absolutely believe that. And I think they can point to specific programs or benefits or things that they feel they do, including when they say, good job, team. Who's the team? And more importantly, Rich, thank you for doing this piece of that, because that allowed me to do this.
Yes.
Or it freed me up. So I didn't have to, you handled that for me. That's a completely different thing than good job, team.
Yeah, that goes from general gratitude to something really specific.
That's right.
And people, that issue of recognition, it isn't always a bigger paycheck. It's, hey, I recognize that you went the extra mile, you saved me on this or that. That is so important to all of us. We all need that.
We think that recognition is the way to go, and in this country, I think that the amount of employee recognition programs we have is in the 90 percentile, and yet if you ask employees, they will tell you they don't feel recognized, because it's not recognition that people really want. I mean, certainly we all want more money, given the opportunity.
Sure.
Yet the reality is, what we want is to be appreciated.
Absolutely.
And not necessarily for what we did, but for who we are. And we've gotten away from that. And I think because we're all moving so fast, we have so many demands on us, our technology is constantly demanding of us, that we don't have time or take the time. We have the time. It's all about what you choose to put your time in, right?
Yeah.
We don't take the time to truly value someone for who they are and what they contribute.
Yeah, I think we can get so technically oriented in whatever we do in a business that we forget that in virtually every business, people are the most important asset that we have.
That's absolutely right.
And that caring has to be genuine. It has to be authentic. If it isn't, it comes through to the people we work with. So
I think one of the things I see is there's not an executive or CEO out there that isn't aiming for results and excellence.
absolutely.
There's not one. You don't go into those kind of roles without that being what you want. The only way you're going to get that is through your people.
That's right.
And even with the artificial intelligence that's coming and the machine learning that's coming, it's going to come, yes. Yet there will still be people. And the
question.
need to take care of those people. All the more so because there will be more technological demands on us, which take us out of the realm of literally this kind of engaging with one another.
Yeah, in a very real sense, it pulls us apart when we need to be coming together.
Yes.
So, well, thank you. Andrea, you're a certified in conversational intelligence. Could you give us an example of working with leadership team or a group and how you saw transformation based on your work with conversations?
If, and that's the big word, if people slow down and spend the time to do this, the rest of it follows. That's the challenge, is we don't do that enough. I remember one time, I'm going to digress here. I remember one time I got hired to work for a university in Switzerland. And my boss invited me to come there, and she said, I want you to come for 4 days. I'm thinking, why do I need a 4-day orientation for
4 days in Switzerland?
Right, well, exactly. So how can I say no to that? So I went, and she spent all kinds of time touring me around and taking me to lunch and dinner, and it was, I felt like after 4 days I had a best friend. And I literally asked her, I said, why? I said, how did you have time to give up 4 days? And she said, because if I made the time now, you're going to do whatever I ask and need you to do, because I understand how you tick and you understand how I tick, and we understand how to ask things of each other. And it was one of the most brilliant things I'd ever done. Now, we can't give everyone 4 days, but we certainly can give them 4 minutes.
Absolutely.
Or 4 hours over the course of a month. And we don't do that enough.
Yeah.
And now I've lost the train of thought of what the question was.
You're just fine. I was asking about transforming groups, but I think so much of it, if I understood where you were going with it, is that you got to use it, and it takes some time investment. And it ought to reflect real caring again.
Well, and in the time investment, what conversational intelligence is really an understanding that with a mantra that I have is with every conversation, verbal or nonverbal, conscious or unconscious, intentional or not, you pull people toward you or you push them away. So if I turn away from you right now, which I'm going to do, because I'm watching this child over here on the playground, the reality is, and I'm still talking to you, it might not be extremely conscious in your head, but you're like, why is she turning away from me? Why did she just put her back to me? There was no intentional, you're not included, I'm disagreeing with what you have to say. Yet the reality was, because I turned away from you, there was something in that movement that said you weren't important. In the same way, if I even just glance over, because here's another child, or there's a leaf falling, or there's a bird that swooped in. You're not important. Something else is more important. And of course, we do this with our phones. We put our phones right there on the boardroom table. Well, the minute the phone is there, we know that I'm not important because you're waiting for that phone to ring, and that's more important than I am.
Oh, great insight.
So how we verbally act and interact, the positive language versus the negative language. The minute I speak in negatives, I put your brain and body into defensive. And when you're in defensive, you can't be your best self in how you respond. And the same to me. So if we can diffuse that in terms of, I'm sensing frustration. Could you tell me about your frustration? Is it with me? Is it with the project? Is it with the hours that you're working?
Yeah. Well, and I think from something you said earlier in our interview that, yes, it's what you're saying. I'm sensing something from the language you're using, that something's going on. How can I help? But it might be your posturing. It might be your distractedness. It might be any variety of things. And I think human nature often is, well, I don't want to share my warts, if you will.
Yes.
But if we really care, and this doesn't mean every CEO, every leader has to be a psychologist and a PhD in that area, but rather just that willingness to dig in and to really find out what's going on. Andrea, these are just such exceptional insights, and I'm so delighted to have interviewed you here. Certainly we were looking forward to doing this anyway, but every time you and I chat, or you and I and Kevin, my business partner, we just enjoy it so much. And there's a great deal of depth here that I think can be valuable to anyone who is viewing this. So I'm going to leave you with one last question. If you could just give one nugget, one takeaway today that anyone viewing this could say, boy, I just need to pursue that, what would it be? Put you on the spot.
You did put me on the spot. If I could get people, can I give two?
Please, two will work fine.
They're related. The first is, take a breath or a moment longer.
Thank you.
And why? Because respond from the other person's perspective. Doesn't matter what you have to say. It matters what they hear. And more importantly, it matters what they feel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We only get things done through our employees, through our team.
Right.
And if we really believe their team, it means we care about them.
Mm-hmm.
They have to accept and embrace what we want.
Right.
So we can't push it at them. We have to encourage them to want what we want.
Thank you. We have all heard the phrase, it's lonely at the top. I think so often, and that's true, but I think it's so often true because that pressure that you've talked about today, that sense of time, I've got to get things done, it creates within us as leaders a sense of pulling away rather than embracing our people and working with them. And that seems so inefficient on the front end. I worked with a CEO years ago who said, Rich, so many of the things you're suggesting to me are just inefficient. We got to move ahead. And yet, as we worked over time, it became more and more clear to him that efficiency was hurt by the fact that we weren't working closely together and connecting and really caring about one another. And ultimately, I think that's at least one of the key elements of great leadership.
Well, and I would add one more thing to that we're so driven by the need for productivity and efficiency that we think, I'll just do one more thing. I'll make one more quick call. I'll do one more email. I'll get this form off my desk. One more. And even when we're really busy, what's the first thing to go in our lives? The social.
Yes.
The going out with friends, or enjoying a ice cream cone with a friend, or going to a movie, or sitting and watching television, whatever it might be. That's the stuff that goes first. And yet it's the unconnecting, and neuroscience would tell us that it's the unconnecting that allows you to reconnect. And so we cannot connect when we're so focused. We have to unfocus in order to be better at what we do.
Part of sharpening the saw.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. I have great takeaways from this conversation. My closing comment is one of my daughters called me one evening about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and she said, I knew where to find you. And I said, where do you think I am? It's a cell phone, I could be anywhere. And she said, you're in your office. And I said, yes, I am. And she said, we have a family event tomorrow night. Can I get you out of the office to be there? And as I looked at the things that I needed to do, my first thought was, I really don't think I better commit to that. But because I have 4 wonderful daughters who beat on me a little bit, and she said, we'll expect you tomorrow. And it was so important for me to be there. Not that I was in charge of the event or anything other than just
your
being
presence.
there. Yeah. So, Andrea, I really appreciate
Thank
this.
you.
More than just the interview and getting it on our CEObuilder channel. I love our chats together.
I do too.
So I'll look
I do
forward
too.
to more. And
Many more.
for you who are viewing this, again, thank you for your time. If any of you would like to find out more from Dr. Andrea Luoma, I'm going to give her just a minute to tell you how to make that connection.
My website is www.andrea Luoma.com, all one word, andrealuoma.com, or you can reach me via email at dra@andrealuoma.com.
We would love to have your comments on our interview today, and Andrea would be happy to respond. Certainly I would as well. So we look forward to any comments or insights you have. Thank you. Well, thank you for your time. This has been another of our interviews on Rich Insights, wherein we bring incredible professionals with great insights for leaders. We hope you'll subscribe to CEO Builder channel, and we will be bringing you others like Andrea, and probably, if I have anything to say about it, again with Andrea soon. Thank you.